Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be covering dictionaries, which is a new data structure that we're going to be working with. So kind of to start things off here though, you'll notice that I'm in a different IDE today. This is Visual Studio Code. This is another very popular IDE for many languages, a lot of scripting languages. Like I use it when I mess around with stuff in Lua, which is another language you see a lot of the time coupled with games, because it's used a lot of time for making add-ons since it's a very, very fast language, and it can plug in pretty well. But anyway, so this is another thing. This is a Microsoft IDE. You might have heard of Visual Studio, and this is just kind of like a smaller version of that in a way. Anyway, it's super popular. It's got Python stuff. Like as soon as you start telling it that you want to code in Python, it'll ask you to install a bunch of stuff, and so you get things like this Python, ooh, this Python terminal down here, and it can run Python pretty much like out of the box with some minor thing. Like it's easy to very easy to set up, so that you don't need to mess around with things like installing Python to work through your command line, and it'll just kind of all run inside this entire IDE space. So this is just kind of again to show you a little bit of different IDEs that are out there. REPL's great for online cloud computing and stuff so that you can have access to your code everywhere. But sometimes you want to just mess around with things on your desktop and, have access to more processing power because it's all, local. And then you don't have to deal with things like internet outages or like REPL being weird because I think it's still a pretty, like a growing company. But anyway, so let's start off here. Let me make this a little bit larger. So anyway, dictionaries. So what we're going to do is, this is another data structure, and it's going to look kind of similar to a list in a certain way, but let's kind of talk a little bit about the differences here. So dictionaries are Python's version of a hash map or an associative array, or you might have heard of them or hear them called lookup tables in other languages. There's going to be some stuff that we'll get into about why they're very good data structures for a lot of things. What they do is that they kind of like a dictionary, you have keys and values in them. So you'll put in a key that has some sort of significance and it'll retrieve a value similar to in a dictionary you would put in a word and you retrieve its definition. So when we look at lists, we might have things like, I don't know, say you wanted to, or I don't know, let me start this again. So in a list, we have keys and values already, I guess, in a way. So you might have one, there's 0 through 6 here or something like that, or let's go 5. And, we might have things like maybe we're storing a list of colors, right? So we have like red, orange, blue, green, and so on. I'm going to just do some dots there. And so you put in a key of 0 and it retrieves whatever's at that index. So let's just copy and paste this guy down here, and this is list, right? In a dictionary, you can do things that are, maybe it's like representing something else. I don't know. So let's call this like our person, maybe. And in here, instead of having 0 through whatever, what we're going to be doing instead is maybe representing a person, or, right? So this dictionary, that's what it is. Maybe we want to have things like name, and then when we type that in to our dictionary, it would retrieve the value Alex, because that's my name. And like if we put in like, occupation, it might retrieve like, software engineer, and so on. So kind of, in a way, it can store more complicated data. That's not always how you want to use them, but you can use them this way. And again, like in some of these projects that we're going to be doing, or like these in-class demos, we'll see where this really pays off. But yeah, so let's get started, I guess, with some basics of this. So if we wanted to make a list in Python, right, we would say something like my list is equal, and then we could put brackets, and then we could put in some values. Jeez, there we go. So that's my list. If we wanted to do a dictionary, right? So there's a couple of different ways. So similar to lists where there's a couple of different ways to make those. We can just do things like, key 1 and then value 1, and like here we key 2, value 2, right? And so if I wanted to just try these out here, so I can print this guy, and then we're going to print this guy. Let's see, we're going to run Python in terminal, and there we go. So we see both of these guys printed out. This is how Python's default for printing stuff is, but yeah, or for printing dictionaries. So yeah, these are basically just, you have a key, and it retrieves a value. And these values can also be a ton of different things. So let's see, kind of demonstrate this. I'm gonna make a person, and flesh this out and show you how this would work. So I might put a name, occupation, I don't know, we'll just fill out a bunch of random information. So what I teach here, there we go, college, UW-Madison, and then just to kind of demonstrate some alternative things here. So, similar to a list, we could have keys that are just numbers, and this is totally valid. So I'll just say, okay, let's int key demo. And these all are strings up here, but you don't need to have strings as all of your values. So I'm going to put something like knows kung fu, and that's false. It did not. And then maybe, we could also store other data structures in here if we wanted to. So maybe we have like a to-do list. And that will be like maybe, mow lawn, make dinner, and record this lesson. Okay, and now I could go down here again and, oops, and print this, and it shouldn't throw any errors. So there we go. Now I've got a dictionary and it's got all this stuff in it. So that's all good. Oh, before I move on to next stuff, so you can also do something like this. Like there's a, so dictionary is a type. So if I did something, like type person, what it's going to tell me is that this is a class dict. You're going to be very careful about pronouncing this one when making sure you enunciate the T at the end. But that is the way that Python identifies it as a dict. So similar to other things like, when you're casting data or something, or trying to parse it into an int, you might do that. I don't know, like 12 or something, right? It's probably not the greatest version of this to do here. Let's do string and give it an integer cast, right? Hello, right click, let's go. There we go. Right, so you can do that. And that's basically just like create a string out of the number, or like an integer 10 or 12, which I can hover over this, and in Visual Studio Code, that's what it gives me, lets me know. So can do a similar thing, like if I wanted to do my dict, I could go dict, and this is a class, so now I can create the class using, because we'll get into this in a later in Unit 7, what classes are, but you can pass things into them, and it'll create an object, which is what all of these things are. Like we have an integer object, we have a string object, they're also classes. Objects are instances of those classes. But yeah, that's for a later unit. What we can do is have things like, you'd say key is equal to value or something like that, and then we could say like, key 2 is equal to, I don't know, like, let's go 77. Key 3 is equal to, I don't know, value 3. And then if I print this guy out, there we go. So yeah, I've created it in a different way. So if I wanted to recreate this, it would be kind of the same thing. And the main thing to note here is that whereas in these I had to put the quotes around my keys, and then this is the format, so I had this format of curly brace, and then I had all my key pairs. And note that because there's curly braces here, signifying that this is all one cluster of stuff, I was able to put all these on different lines, which makes it a lot easier to read. You can also do other stuff here. I could put a bunch of tabs in. Sometimes people like to do this to just kind of make it cleaner, so like all the values are lining up. You don't have to do that, but you can. This is still totally valid to do. I could, just to kind of prove that, I could say this. But anyway, so let me try running this again. There we go. We can see that did not throw any errors. Totally valid. Although I didn't put this one here. But yeah, so this was the general format was you had a string, colon, and then value for that thing. Or maybe not a string, this is an integer. That was my key. Yeah. And in this one, my keys are on this side. I'm kind of curious how this works. So if I put in 0 is equal to, I don't know, 14, what is this going to do? Okay, so Python didn't like that. So I guess in this way you can't put in an integer there. Expecting more of like a string name or something. I don't know. But basically, if I wanted to recreate this in here, I might say like name is equal to Alex, and then I could kind of go through the same things here. I'm going to just copy and paste for sake of time. Why are we mad at this? What? I think it's just confused. Unless it really does not like spaces for some reason. This should run, I think. Invalid syntax. Okay. Oh, duh. Right, so I didn't want that there at the end. There we go. So anyway, that's how you do it here. No quotes around it. You're giving it a key and a value the same way, just the syntax is a little bit different. And we're using this keyword here of dict, which is referencing the class dict. And when I highlight or hover over it in Visual Studio Code, get a couple of different things. So yeah, moving on then. So these are two different ways that we can declare a dictionary. So now how do we get things out of it? Because now we have all this stuff in here, but it's not going to be useful until we actually can work with that data. So when we had lists, right? So we had maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. If I wanted to grab the first value out of there, I would say something like print my list, give it a bracket, and put 0 in because that would be the 0th index. And there we go, I got a 1 back, just as I expected here. If I want to do the same thing for a dictionary, so I would put in, let's see, so let's go teaches, right? And now if I run this, I get that string back. So very similar syntax, but you're passing in a key, which can be a huge array of different things. Mostly, you're going to see this as different strings. So yeah, like that happened. Or here we go. So yeah, we got this back out. What happens though if we pass in? So if we pass in something that doesn't exist, right? So like if I put in my list and I don't know, I give it index 99, which doesn't exist. I think that should throw an error. Yeah, so we get list index out of error. Sometimes I get confused with Python always has its own world of things. Every other language would definitely throw index out of bounds. Yeah, and there's this index out of range, which is a little bit different. So, I don't know. Let's see something here like, what do we want to do? Like age or something, right? So this doesn't exist in here. Get rid of that before it throws an error. And we get a key error. So that's fun, right? We all like dealing with errors. So there's two ways that we can kind of deal with this. Like obviously in lists, we can say things like, get the length of it, and then we can avoid entirely finding, or, trying to request an index that's out of bounds, or what did they call this? Out of range for Python. So I want to say like the most Pythonic way to do this would actually be surrounding this in a try-catch block, which is something that we haven't covered yet. There's also a built-in method. So similar to how lists have all their methods and strings have things like .lower to convert stuff to lowercase, dictionaries have a couple of things, and we're going to get more into these in Unit 6.02. But for now, we have, let's use, so of course, when I start typing here, I get a list of all kinds of different stuff that comes up, of things that I can do. We're going to cover more of these again next unit, but right now we're going to be interested in get. So get tries to find a key, and if it can find it, it retrieves it, and if it can't, it's going to give you back none. So if I just put in get name, or maybe, I can't remember if it returns true or false or what, but we'll see in a sec. So yeah, there we go. It retrieved the value for me. If I throw in age, I get none back. So remember, that's going to be Python's none type, which is just like an absence of value, or if you're coming from another language, it's none or null. It's the equivalent. So this is just kind of a more forgiving way. If you try to throw in, maybe you don't know if everybody's got the same keys in their dictionary, you can do get and it'll find it if it's there. Otherwise, it returns something that you can at least still work with. And, like, granted, like, so that one didn't blow up and throw an error, it just printed out none. But there's another thing you're going to have to account for in that case, because maybe you don't want to print out none. Last thing kind of cover about these, they are case sensitive. So if I have a lowercase version of this, and put in an all caps name, I'm going to get none back, because this version, or this all caps version, did not exist in my dictionary. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're working around these. Oh, here we go, another fun one. So maybe you're working with variables or something, and you collected user input or something like, I don't know, like let's try, or let's do something like, or like we'll call this key name is equal to input, and say, what data do you want to or query about this person? And then all we're going to do here is I'm going to say print get person, and let's throw this in like a I don't know, we'll just do like a while true, and then I'll have to just manually kill this. So let's run this down in the terminal here. So here we go. What data do I want to query about this person? And I could say name, and it prints that out. I can go age, doesn't have anything, so it prints that out. Same thing, name, prints none. So I can store this into a variable and then put my variable into get, or I could even put it into the brackets Here, so I'm going to Control C to kill this, get a keyboard interrupt, which is the only way you can break out of a while true if it doesn't have any other way to, break or return or something. So just kind of show this off, and where this is gonna break in a second too. But I can put in key name in here, and let's run this guy again. So what data do I want? Oops, did not want to type there. To list. And now if I throw an age, this actually kills my program and ejects me from this while loop because it threw an unhandled error, a key error. So yeah, just to kind of demonstrate that you don't have to have like the exact thing. Like, you can store it into a variable, and the dictionary will be able to figure that out. Last little point here is, so we've got data in the dictionary that we, maybe, what do you call it? We initialized it with, and we figured out how we can retrieve that data, but now how do we work with it? Like, maybe if we want to update it or something, right? So maybe we want to change my name to my full name. So in that case, what we can do is say person, and we'll put in the key. So similar to a list, where I don't know why I keep deleting this, but if I have my list 1, 2, 3, 4, and I wanted to change this last value to a 5 or something, I might say what is it? 0, 1, 2, 3. So that'd be the third index is equal to 5, and then I could print my list. I'm going to comment this out, and if I ran this now, right, so I initialized it with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I retrieved the last index and set that to 5, and we can see that the result down here is indeed got a 5. It's pretty much the same syntax when you're working with dictionaries. So if I wanted to change this, I could say person name is now Smith, and we'll just print out the whole dictionary structure. So I'm going to print it before and after, just so we can kind of see the differences. And of course, this gets very sloppy in here because of how Python decides to print these out by default. But we see beforehand it's got Alex, and now it's got Alex Smith. I could also do something like, maybe I just want to append to it. So I could say this is similar to working with variables. Normally, I could put in, the dictionary and its key, and set that equal to the previous value plus something more. And just I'm going to run this. Let me clear this out. So I'll use this. CLS is the keyword for that. Run this again, and we get the exact same results. So get Alex and then Alex Smith down here. Whew. Okay, so that's kind of all the base information about a dictionary that you're going to need to know to get through the in-class exercises. So at this point, if you want to go off and try those on your own, feel free. Otherwise, let's try this out. All right, so here are the in-class exercises that we're going to be doing. So this is 6.01, Dictionaries Intro. So this first one is going to ask us pretty much to do what we were doing over in the sandbox area, which is, real quickly. So this is kind of a cool thing. PyCharm also allows you to do this, but it's a little bit, I think, harder, where you have to go up into like view or something of how you want to view your coding area. So I can just drag and drop this guy, and it's going to be hard to see right here, but I can put up two different windows at the same time. You also see over here that in Visual Studio Code you've got like this whole like draggy drop bar, so you can kind of see at a glance like what your code might look like. You'll see this in Sublime Text too. I can't remember if PyCharm also had. Oh, I've got this open. Yeah, so they don't have that in there, and you'll notice like I can't drag and drop it in PyCharm, which is kind of obnoxious. I think it's somewhere up in here if you're working in PyCharm. But anyway, I don't want to mess around with that too long. Just to kind of demo some of the unique things about each of these IDEs, what makes them, maybe one of them, something that you might want to look into or skip over. Anyway, so this says, create a function that will return a dictionary that will model data about yourself, including keys, name, age, class, which would be your class in school. And make sure for this one that you're using one of these 5 values. Otherwise, you're going to fail the auto grader because it's specifically looking for this stuff. Hair color, eye color, and whatever your favorite song is at the moment. So this is going to be pretty straightforward, I think. We're going to just, this is, how declare a dictionary in some way. So we saw 2 different ways, with the curly braces or with the dict keyword. And that's all you're going to need to do for this one. So take a minute and coming back, let's solve this. So we don't need to create a whole variable for this necessarily. We can. So I'll do it kind of both ways here. So maybe we'll call this student or something because this is building a student profile. And so I'm going to just hit enter here because this is a little bit easier, I think, just to see in general what's going on. So I'll put name. I'm going to just kind of fill this out wordlessly. 'Cause I don't think there's a whole lot we need to know here. So age, remember it says as an int. Everything else is basically going to be a string. Class, I graduated a while ago, so this is n/a for not applicable. Got brown hair. I'm going to make an eye color key. I've got blue eyes. And then fave song. Not sun. I've been listening to this quite a bit. Okay. And then all we would do is that it says also that this needs to return this dictionary. So we've seen a couple of different returns. There we go. You could have also done this with the dict keyword. Alternatively, we don't really need to, creating this variable is kind of a waste of memory. I mean, it doesn't matter a huge amount. Actually, I don't even know if this is necessarily a waste of memory, but it's a line that we don't really need. So we could also just say return and then this dictionary, and this is actually completely fine as well. So there we have it. This is how you solve question 1 on here. All right, so question 2 is going to ask us, and it's kind of building off of this thing, which is why they're all in the same file this time. Write a function that calls student profile to get the dictionary to work with. Then we'll print out the following information styled as name, age, and class. All right, so let's see. Take a minute and try to solve this on your own. Otherwise, coming back in now. All right, so first off, we're going to need to get rid of this pass. As we remember from other things, that just basically means hey, there's a function that's defined here, just we haven't filled in its guts yet. So let's see. First thing we need to do is, this is returning a dictionary. So we're going to need to use this function. Also, should have been build student profile. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to need to use that. And so let's grab our student first. So this will return basically whatever this is, whatever you've filled out there. So now we've got this. And now we need to print out some information. So as we recall, if we wanted to grab name, now we can say student name because we've aliased it as such. So we retrieved whatever this dictionary was, stored it into a variable called student. Now we can interact with student as a dictionary, and Python's actually picking up on this too. It knows that this returned a dictionary type, or I guess this is more Visual Studio Code, so when I hover over it, it knows that it's a dict. And then we are just grabbing name out of here. We need to grab age and class as well. And then we're going to print these out. And this doesn't have a return of anything, so let's print these using an F string just to kind of demonstrate a little bit more about what we can do with these. You could store all of these into separate value or variables and print that out as an F string, but you can also do them just directly. So first thing to note here, right? So if I put this in, and now I've got this double quote, and I wanted to maybe escape this. I can't remember. Python might accept this, but generally, anytime that you're working with, strings inside of strings, you're going to do this. But I think because, we've got these two curly braces that escape this, we're probably not going to need that, but it might be easier just to see which, string that we're working with. This is the string for the key versus the string overall. Thank you. There we go. And now we need a space in here, and then we're going to basically do this a bunch of times. So, normally you would do the curly braces to say that, hey, this isn't a string value right now or something. Or, we're grabbing a variable, and whatever string is contained in that variable. So let's see. I'm going to say student age. Whoops. I'm going to continue with this convention of using single quotes inside of a string that's defined as double quotes, just to kind of make it clear. And lastly, I can say student and class. All right, so now that we've got all this stuff in here, maybe we want to try testing this. This one's not highlighting. Is there a reason for that? Did I miss something? Oh, yes, I did miss something. So that's a good thing to notice when you're working with this stuff, is make sure that you've completed all these. Sometimes, depending on IDE, it'll highlight different things. So there I could see that I was missing this, and normally these guys are all in blue, but this one wasn't, and so that indicated that there might have been a syntax error to me. And then I was able to fix this. So let's, at this point, maybe we want to try seeing what this does and make sure that everything is running as expected. So I'm going to run this guy in the Python terminal, and it did not like this. Why did it not? What is my... Oh, is it because I didn't save or something? What is the matter with you? Did it not like that I have a bunch of stuff over here? Very interesting. Oh, duh. Okay. There we go. So I did not close this out because I am dumb. Alright. Now we should be able to run this. And there we go. I was just scrolled way up in there. So we'll do another clear. And there we go. So yeah. So we got all this data printing out. Note here that we didn't really need to cast this because F strings are handling that. Normally, because there's an int stored in here, we would have had to cast this with string or something like that. But F string takes care of that for us. So cool. We are good to move on. All right. Moving on to question 3. I'm going to get rid of this just so we don't keep printing that data out. It says write a function that checks for a value, or a value for a favorite TV show key in a given dictionary. man, I screwed up on this. If it has the value, print it. If it doesn't, or print it and then return true. If it doesn't, then we're going to add a value for it with our favorite TV show and return false. So take a minute, try to figure this out on your own, and then we're going to come back now and cover this. So in this one, we're going to be working with get, because we don't know how to do try and catch or dealing with errors right now. So we're going to use the one way that we know to work with this. So in here, we're passed in an input dictionary, which is what we have to work with. So we know that we're going to need an if statement, basically. We need to find out if this value exists in there. We're going to do something. If it doesn't, we're going to do something else. So this indicates we're going to have some sort of if statement for logic or control flow or logic control. And then we want something that is going to find whether or not this value exists in the input, or our input dictionary. So let's use get, and then just to make sure I've got the spelling all correct here, I'm going to paste that into there. And so at this point, I can actually just print this out, right? So basically, because of the concept of truthiness in Python, so if a string has a value to it, or like, some text, this is a truthy thing, or this is going to return true, basically. If I just do if it doesn't have something, or it's going to return none. None is by default a falsy value. I mean, another way I could do this is just say, like, if I don't know, I could say if this is not equal to none, that would be the equivalent. So either way works, but we don't need to. Just kind of a side note of the nuances of Python. A lot of languages don't support stuff like that. Like C#, you don't have truthiness. Well, maybe you do, but I don't remember exactly. But anyway, anyway, in this case, this means that we have a value or found something for that key, because it did not return none, which would be a falsy value, or it would be interpreted as false, right? So what we want to do in this situation is we're going to just print this. So now that we know this key exists, I can do something like input dict, and then my bracket syntax. Oops, I already had those in there. And I don't have to worry at this point, because I know that this key already exists in here, and I can just print it out, and then I can return true. So the other case, which means that I found none, or this returned none, which meant that the value did not exist in my dictionary, I could say, so what I want to do is define a new value, which is, I guess, something I did not exactly cover. So basically the same thing when we go to update values. You could also just insert them like this. So I can just say something like favorite TV show. And now this is creating a new slot in my dictionary. So kind of when we were thinking about this would have added a fave TV show. My goodness, I cannot type. So that's creating a new key. Whereas, in lists, we might have to do like .append or something. So for dictionaries, we don't need to. And then, I don't know, I think my all-time favorite show still is Futurama. At least the OG seasons, right? So the new seasons kind of sucked. And then this says to return false. So there we go. This is how we would solve this problem. All right, so our last one. So basically what we've got here is, this first question was, how do we create a dictionary? So show me that you can create one. This one is, how do you get or retrieve data from it? Now we know how to insert data into a dictionary and check for values. And then this last one is saying, write a function to simulate a birthday that will increment the value of age by 1 for a given dictionary. And so this one's going to be, can you update stuff in a dictionary? So take a minute here, try to figure this one out, and coming back now. All right, so this one, not a whole lot to it. We have our dictionary, and this is going to have age. So we've retrieved this value, and we want to overwrite it basically, right, with a new value. And we want to add 1 to it, whatever the previous value was. So in here, we're going to say, treating it like a variable. You can't really do, at least I don't think you should be able to do plus equals for dictionaries. So we need to grab its previous value and add 1. And so let's kind of test all of these things out. Right, so if I go student is equal to build student profile, now I've got a dictionary to work with, and I'm going to say, let's see, or actually I don't need to print this. Well, it's going to just return true or false. I'm going to pass student in here, and I want to actually call this guy twice. When I do this, so it prints out false, and now since I'm going to rerun this entire thing, now it printed out false because the first time it didn't find anything in there, and what it was doing first was appending this value into a dictionary. So we see false come back, and then we see Futurama printed out because that's what it does when it finds the value, and then it returned true. And so that's pretty much all we see in here. And then let's also try this guy out. So I'm going to pass in I'm going to comment these two guys out. So I'm going to hold down Control and do a /, which is generally like the standard syntax for multi-line or commenting out, except in certain ID. Like if you go into actual Visual Studio, I think it's Control-Shift / or something. But so let's have birthday here. We're gonna actually, we're not printing this out because, oh my goodness, my syntax is all terrible here. So what we want to do is print out student and then grab their age, and then what we're going to do is have birthday, and we're going to pass student in there because that's our dictionary that we've built off of this. And now we're going to print it out afterwards just to show that we actually did the thing that we expected. So beforehand it was 32, we had birthday, and now it's 33. And so every one of these is now working. And that's all there is really to this in-class demo. So thanks for tuning in.